This is definitely the hardest video I've ever made, and I've been off social media for the last few years because they were definitely the most difficult years of my life. There were times that I genuinely wasn't sure if I was going to make it or how much time I might have, which was really scary, but I did. I made it, and now I am experiencing literal miracles and magic in my life that I never thought was even possible. This is really hard for me to be vulnerable and share all of this right now. I hope that there's at least one person out there that I can help by doing so. So hi, I'm Corrine Summers. I'm a corporate wellness coach, a life coach, a Reiki master. I've studied yoga, meditation, and mindfulness, Ayurveda, something called NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. I'm also a gong master and have studied music therapy and so many different modalities for raising our frequency and for our overall well-being and empowerment. And this is a really long video, but there was so much to cover. So I'm going to talk about my misdiagnosis and kind of what happened, the journey, how I ended up finding my doctor and getting healing, the signs and symptoms of TBIs and chronic brain injuries or post-concussion syndrome. And then I'm also going to be sharing about the different tools that really kept me alive and surviving, and thriving sometimes. So I hope you'll stick around to the end, and thanks for being here. For my entire life, for my adult life, we're talking 22 years, I have suffered from mysterious autoimmune issues, hormone problems, neurological symptoms, central nervous system, chaos, just a lot of fight and flight distress, and again, the hormonal and neurological issues that doctors just couldn't figure out and had chalked it up to Lyme disease. I was diagnosed with Lyme disease in 2010 after a tick bite that gave me a big bullseye rash. I actually pulled the tick off of me, tested positive, and I was only put on antibiotics for 3 days because I had an allergic reaction to the antibiotics. I then had a negative test, but then years later I had a positive test and then a negative test, and it was all very confusing. And I'd also had H. pylori and Epstein-Barr and hepatitis and all kinds of gut issues with candida and so many different things that they had basically said it could be any of these, kind of underlying illnesses that are causing these ongoing hormonal and immune problems. And I was basically told to just, you're kind of on your own, and you're gonna suffer, and we can't really help you that much. And I had one really amazing doctor in Chicago who was really honest with me. She was the top infectious disease hospital at the top hospital in Chicago, downtown Chicago, and she was really honest and looked me in the eyes and was like, you are already doing all the best things that you can do for yourself right now through your holistic health journey and everything that you've traveled the world to study and learn. She's like, I was just at an infectious disease, conference with all the top doctors around the country, and nobody knows what they're doing or talking about when it comes to Lyme disease. And everything that you're doing might actually help you. Here under Western medicine, all I'm going to be able to do is continue to put you on rounds of antibiotics. And thank God I didn't do any more of that nonsense, because I ended up not even being Lyme disease. So anyway, as I had been struggling with these health issues since I was a teenager, around 18, 19, I started to have just a lot of problems pop up. And then the Lyme disease thing actually came, a few years later than that. But throughout this entire journey, I started traveling and seeking out other options. So in 2011, I went to Nepal, and I spent months there volunteering at an orphanage and traveling 2 weeks to Tibet. And then after, I went for over a month to India and for a couple weeks to Sri Lanka, and I studied breath work and yoga and meditations, and I spent so much time in nature and absorbing these ancient cultures. It was the first I'd heard of Reiki and different energy work. I studied the chakras at an ashram in Rishikesh in the mountains. I went back to India later in life and studied, I have 150 hours in something called Ayurveda, which is one of India's beautiful natural and holistic medicine systems. And I did a 21-day detox there. I spent a month studying with a yoga doctor in Spain and getting certified with her. I traveled to Morocco and I studied spices and did healing therapies there. I also went all over Europe. I invested so much time, energy, and money into my healing and getting, these certifications came because I was seeking answers for myself. I went on and became a Reiki master. I got 2 different yoga certifications, several meditation certifications, became a certified life coach, and then a certified corporate wellness coach. I've had so much success in my business along the way. And I feel so blessed because honestly, I'm looking back from this point in this diagnosis now, and I have no idea how I freaking did it. But I survived. I kept fighting for myself. I kept fighting for answers, and I kept, listening to my body, and eventually that got me there. So anyway, I'm traveling, I'm doing all these things, I'm learning all these tools, but my symptoms were kind of going back and forth, Then I had a couple of incidents in 2020, 23. It was an accident. I had another concussion, and I'll tell you about the first concussions here in a little bit. But at this point, I wasn't even thinking of those first concussions in my childhood and as a teen. So in 2023, this other traumatic incident, I started to have even more health problems, like a cascading, health problems after that. And eventually half my body was numb, like my right side of my neck and all the way down my right arm. My right foot was couldn't feel it at all. And I had all kind of tingling nerve pain in this whole half of my body, which was absolutely terrifying. And, I'm young, I'm in my 30s. I'm like, I should not have half my body numb, and the doctors are confused. But that was what ended up happening. I went for a lot of really serious tests, beyond x-ray. Did this one test. I can't think of what it's called right now. All I can think of is an EKG, but that's not what this was. This was something where they put all these needles in my leg, like 100 of them at different, it was 100 total, but it was pricks at different times into different nerves to test and make sure all my nerves were working. And it was connected to this big machine. It was super creepy. I felt like a lab rat in that one for sure. And then they ended up sending me for a brain MRI because they thought I had MS. And my symptoms were not improving at this point. And they, nobody really knew why. So they thought, well, maybe it's MS, and let's send you for, and there you had that concussion, so let's send you for an MRI. I went for the MRI, and they did a brain and neck MRI, and it came through that everything was fine. There were some minor spots, maybe from Lyme or something, but everything for all intents and purposes at that time, there was nothing that they could do specifically to help me. That really sent me into a negative spiral, I'll tell you, for a moment, because I could not believe I was just hearing a we don't know again, and being left with such severe neurological and health symptoms. But that's what happened. Going back just a little bit, right before this brain MRI, right before it, I had done days worth of prayer and ritual and calling in the powers that be to literally save my life and help me get answers. And I'll share more about the different rituals and things that I did in my prayer, my specific language that I used in my prayer. But I asked over and over that I would be, saved, and that my life would be spared, and that I would be able to be healed. And that if that happened, that I would stop at nothing to share whatever it was that ended up healing me, and to just continue to help people as I have on my path as a coach and a teacher, and that I would dedicate the rest of my life. And that my ultimate wish was that I would get better, but also that whatever the solution, whatever happened as a result of this experience, that it would be for the highest, most optimal healthiest and wealthiest and peaceful and powerful timeline, not just for me, but for all people. And it's very much a part of my mission as a coach and as a teacher to help raise the frequency of humanity in the planet. And very much, I'm a Virgo, so I'm very much in the service mode. And that was where those prayers came from. Immediately after that, I called in some really terrible things that happened. Like, it was like boom, 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 like everything seemed to be falling away. And it was definitely all falling away so that it would create the openings for what was about to come in, which was my miracle. I just didn't know it yet. So as a result of one of those times of prayer, I had the nudge to reach out to an old friend of mine, Steve. And so I reached out to him and we ended up getting together, and he and I were just chit-chatting and talking, and we'd both, been through some rough stuff, and we're just openly like loving and sharing with each other after not seeing each other for a long time. And he was like, I don't know half the shit you're talking about. But it sounds like you're speaking the same language as my friend Jean. And I must introduce you to. He's a gong master. He's opening this geodesic dome, wellness studio and retreat center, and like, you guys have to meet. So for my birthday last September, I was introduced to him, and he gave me and my really good friend Danny a beautiful gong ceremony as a gift for our birthdays. We're like 2 days, the 3rd and the 4th, Virgo besties. So, and Jean's also a Virgo. So we had a big Virgo party, and got together and had the most amazing sound journey. And, it was just an absolute wonderful experience. But anyway, so he enters my life. And he's really important in this whole diagnosis of my 22-year mystery. So we start hanging out. We're going to help each other. I'm going to help him with the studio, and like, we're going to collaborate and all this stuff. We become really close. And then flash forward a little bit longer, and then we eventually started dating as well. That's irrelevant right now, but the crazy thing was that what I had shared with him, probably because of the closeness of our relationship, and these aren't the kinds of conversations you share with most people, but because we were spending a lot of time together, I just casually mentioned my experience at the eye doctor to him. And I almost forgot one of the most important parts. So he was a former motocross athlete and like a star, like won dozens and dozens of awards, was number one all around the country for quite a while, until he quit in his early 20s because he had over 10 concussions and a lot of symptoms to manage. And so that was how he found the gongs, and how he found all the tools and the meditation stuff and all the wellness stuff that brought us together and that we had in common. He's actually he's a magician. He's a wizard. He knows so much about frequency and energy and the human instrument that is our divine being, and how to optimize it. So it's been such a fruitful relationship, and most importantly, because he is the entire reason I got healing. So I went to this eye doctor appointment. I'm sorry, I'm getting scattered, but there's so many details. I went to this eye doctor appointment just for my usual annual checkup in April, and I was having a really, really hard time. I had also had a hard time the year before, but this was even worse. And in a couple previous ones, I hadn't previously even gone to really needed to go to the eye doctor. I'd always had 20/20 vision. So this was an escalation of my injury. And I was barely able to read the lines, but not because I couldn't see. It was like my brain wasn't working. I was trying to focus on the words, and I was having to think so hard. And there were tears rolling down my cheeks, and the doctor had said, this is strange that you're having such a hard time, and especially based on what my actual vision results were. my vision wasn't bad enough that I should have struggled that much. And so it was confusing. Although I did have like a, stigmatism in my one eye and some vision issues in my eyes at the time. Those actually might end up being things that improve for me now that my brain is back in the right place. Get back to more of that in a second. So anyway, I had mentioned this eye doctor appointment and how much I was struggling to Gene, and he then immediately clicked for him all the different symptoms I was having. The issues with my sleep, the neurological issues where I would like lose my words sometimes, the migraines and headaches, and I was just getting horrible migraines and my brain would feel like it was on fire. I was in constant fight or flight. My body was in survival mode constantly, and I couldn't handle any triggers at that point. It escalated severely by the end of this, where I really couldn't handle anything, and I would get hot and I would get, defensive or angry even, and I couldn't understand why. I really didn't understand what was happening to my body. It was very scary. So much of it was so scary. I'm trying to keep it together, but this was an unbelievably difficult experience. And I had so many doctors gaslighting me and telling me, your brain MRI is clear. We don't know why you're losing your words sometimes, or, having this much brain fog. And, again, they would just keep blaming it on all these mysterious things that had happened. And it might be this, it might be this. It just seemed like they were always guessing, which was infuriating. When I was struggling as much as I was so sick by the end of this. Like I said, I was barely making it. And I'm so lucky that I had someone like Gene come into my life, because even though I kept telling him, I'm not in a good place to date anybody, I need to heal myself first, he kept, reminding me that, that's one of the reasons he's in my life, is to help me get that healing. So anyway, I let go into trust, and I went to the doctor that he recommended, a concussion specialist who happens to be in Pittsburgh, where I live, works with NFL and NHL players, and a lot of normal people too, a lot of Amish and people in those communities have a lot of head injuries. So I go into this doctor to do his analysis to see if you either have the problem that he can help with, the sphenoid bone displacement, or you don't, and he has to send you to somebody else and he can't help you. And I walk in, and all over the walls are signs of the symptoms, and they're all my symptoms. All of them. The physical symptoms, the mental and emotional symptoms, the sleep related and the cognitive or neurological symptoms, they're just written all over the walls. And then they hand me the clipboard with the form to fill out, and I look and I fill it out, and I have every single symptom. And some of them were weird things that I didn't expect, like getting lost while driving, which I always was so I didn't understand why I'm getting lost so easily going places that I always, there were so many things that were just very confusing, and it literally felt like I had dementia, and I'm in my 30s. So that was terrifying. And the other ones were things like, vision taste and smell. The vision was more obvious, but taste and smell, and being really sensitive to noise and to crowds. I had blamed a lot of my taste, smell, senses dulling issues on allergies and I got COVID, early on in 2020 when I was coming back from that a month in India studying with those Ayurvedic doctors. It was February 2020. Everyone was wearing masks in the airport. I got there and was oh, what's going on? And then I got really sick right after that, and people were saying, oh, that's one of the symptoms. So there were just all these small things that I blamed on other things. Again, it was all these small little things that just didn't add up when they were one at a time. If you looked at each one, you could find something to blame it on, and then you put them all together into a big picture. Especially looking at that clipboard, when I had checked all of those symptoms, I was oh man, something's really wrong with me. It was a huge wake-up call, and I realized that I'd been gaslighting myself just as much as everyone else had been gaslighting me. I also had really horrible friends and a really terrible exes. I chose terrible friends and partners for myself from my brain injury. Really just making better choices with this one. But anyway, before I get too distracted, I want to show you guys the sphenoid bone, because I found one online and I bought it because I had to know. It goes right here like a butterfly. Isn't it beautiful? It's like my transformation butterfly. It transformed my whole freaking life and pushed me into the path that I ended up on. You know, I would have been probably stuck in finance for a lot longer if I wouldn't have gotten sick. Yeah, I used to be in wealth management and do stuff with numbers, and spreadsheets would make me go cross-eyed. I couldn't do it. Like the executive dysfunction stuff, that was another one that I did a lot of gaslighting around myself for. And turns out it was another one of those signs of my brain injury that I ignored. So this is the sphenoid bone. We all have it. It sits right in the center of the brain. It is, as my doctor says, the most important bone in the brain because it hosts and holds the pituitary gland right here in this little dip, little seat. Goes right there. Mine had been from repeated concussions. I fell as a child, 18 months old, fell out of a swing onto my face, split my lip open. And actually, I have a picture of that. No, I don't. I only have a picture of me when I was that age. Look how cute, little baby. So, well, there's another one. I didn't have much hair. I was kind of a bald little baby. Then when I was 8, it happened again. I was at the fair with my family and we were running and I was playing and having the best time of my life when I was like, I think I was 7 actually. I look, maybe even 6. I was between that age. And I fell and I did it again and I split my lip open. Look at that right there. Look at that. Also check out that wallpaper and those bows on my sweatshirt. Wow. Split it open and I still have scars from my teeth went right through split open my lip this way, but also went through my chin. That's how hard I fell on my face. Okay. So that was that age. Then flash forward. Oh boy. Oh boy. Flash forward to my cheerleading days. Yep. There we go. Knock Knight's cheerleader. And in my cheerleading days, I was a top girl. I was a flyer. And in practice one day, they dropped me from 3 girls up. So there was 2 girls and then I was the 3rd top of the pyramid. And when we were coming down, they weren't paying attention. And instead of catching me in a little basket like they're supposed to, I dropped and hit the back of my head and my neck. It was also very scary and scary experience, but whatever. They got to like run laps the rest of practice and I went to the nurse and I really don't remember, honestly. I remember that it happened, but I don't remember a lot of the details, which is normal when you have a concussion. Oh, and there was one more that I actually don't remember at all. My mom had to tell me. Once the doctor told me what had happened to me and how serious my injury was, and he thought it was coming from when I was a child, that there's no way it was just a few years, that this is something that I've likely been dealing with for a couple of decades. We recounted all of these different incidents, and she told me about another one when we were helping a friend move like a 4-poster bed, and we were moving it up the stairs and like it fell back on me really hard and knocked me out. And I like fell and hit my head really hard. My mom said she almost took me to the hospital, but I seemed fine, so we didn't. And I'm saying this, I'm telling you all these different things because like they're so innocuous and like small things that I'm kids fall and hurt themselves and hit their heads all the time. Cheerleaders and fall, and football players hit their heads, and other athletes, people hit their heads. People have accidents, and, trucking and tractor accidents, and all kinds of different types of car accidents, and, so many different types of accidents. People are in abusive relationships. That was something else I had to deal with as an adult. That was probably also a part of this. That's definitely the hardest one for me to speak about, but there was definitely an incident there. So it's crazy what can happen to you. And, there's this tiny little bone. We know so little about the brain is the thing. We have this tiny little bone in the center of our brain, and it is so important. It holds the pituitary gland, which is the center of all of our hormones. That is your computer switchboard. That is the control board for every single hormone for your, in your body, for TSH, for LH, for MSH, for, there's like 7, but anyway, it has a huge impact, and it can create a lot of different problems. So before I digress anymore, like I said, mine was like dropped down, and then it was pressing up against the right side of my brain stem, so impacting all my right brain activity, as it was basically crushing into the right part of my brain. So the movement of this bone in my head was pretty significant. People can move at all different, angles, and some people can hit their head very light and have a very serious injury. Some people can hit their head very hard and have no injury or a minor injury. My partner, Gene Stahl, who had been, had so many concussions from motocross and his role as an athlete, he didn't need this treatment. His bone was actually somehow in the right place. Whatever, something about the bone structure. We don't know if it's something about the way that we were hit through our concussions. But crazy what can happen to you, and also incredible what miraculous healing we can have. Okay, so now I want to get into some of the signs and symptoms. Sorry, this has gone on longer than I thought, but I really needed to get all of that out. So, and I want to share as much as possible so that other people that might have some similar thing going on can get as many context clues as possible. I'm also still processing. This is the first week I felt so alert that I could actually make a video. It's been a really, really hard recovery journey, and I'll talk more about that in another separate video. For now, we're going to jump into symptoms. I want to educate everyone about what kinds of signs and symptoms to look out for. So let me go over these. And if any of these resonate with you, please get checked by a post-concussion specialist. You can always message me and reach out to me. My information is below, and I'm happy to help guide anybody who feels like maybe this is something they're dealing with. Okay, so physical symptoms are things like chronic fatigue that no amount of rest fixes, and no amount of sleep supplements. I was taking so many. And I did improve my sleep. I got really good sleep. I thought I was getting really good sleep before this. And I lead sleep workshops and coach so many people on improving their sleep. And I did really think that my sleep was improved. At one point, it got so much worse, and I was doing all the same things, and I wasn't sure what had happened. And again, it was this brain injury progressing. So there was nothing I could do, but the tools I was using managed it for a really long time. That, it's funny because I was doing so much for my health that I managed my symptoms so well and survived and even thrived at times, that it almost made it even harder to diagnose. But chronic fatigue, and I know that one, a lot of people have that. That's very common with many different illnesses, so that one alone is definitely not enough. Persistent migraines or headaches, hormone imbalances that don't respond to treatment, autoimmune symptoms with no clear diagnosis, vision problems and difficulty focusing, your eyes, problems overall like with blurry vision, balance issues and dizziness, nerve issues, if you have parts of your body going numb, something might not be communicating or wiring quite right. Cognitive symptoms, those are things like brain fog and, again, brain fog that doesn't lift, and trouble with executive function and getting things done. I was feeling so worn out with computer work, and I was really stressed out about this. Things like too much computer work, or if I would go out and run too many errands or have to do like too many stops, I would get completely exhausted. It would use all of my energy for the day. And because this bone, I didn't explain this before, this bone also hosts your visual cortex, sits up here. So it controls your eyes and your eyesight, and that's why the sphenoid bone displacement is really connected, the eye issues and vision issues. So anyway, difficulty concentrating or reading, memory problems, feeling confused easily, struggling with tasks that should be really simple, emotional symptoms like just unexplained emotional outbursts, or like me crying after my vision test for no reason. That is a huge one. Like when you don't understand your emotions, and your emotions, they feel like they're responding without your control or permission, which can be hard to notice. I was able to notice this one because I'd also spent so much time in meditation and learning, I was naturally pulled to these things because of what I struggled with, and it does help, but it can only help so much. Anxiety or panic that seems to come out of nowhere, depression that doesn't respond to typical treatments, feeling dysregulated or off all the time, central nervous system distress, and then the problem here is, PTSD. That is a huge one, apparently, with brain issues. Sleep, any kind of sleep disturbances and different types of sleep issues. But the PTSD is apparently very common when it comes to brain issues. There's another amazing doctor. He's been interviewed on the Joe Rogan podcast so many times, but his name is Dr. Mark Gordon, and he's done some really incredible research with war vets specifically, and that they have documented research that shows that people who have been in the military can have different types of brain damage and head injury issues, not specifically the sphenoid bone, but just different types of head injury issues, all just because of the sound and IEDs and the sound of an explosions and guns going off, and all of that can be enough when it's from an IED or an explosion to actually cause different types of damage. So I'll link more of that down below as well, so you guys can do your own research. But what I want to share now is just a glimpse into some of the tools that kept me alive. So now here's what's wild. All of those years I spent building the Burnout Blueprint and the tools I cover in my burnout course. It was learning meditation in Tibet and studying breathwork in India and becoming a Reiki master and developing all of these nervous system regulations that I thought I was doing to cure Lyme disease and burnout and, cure and / prevent. But it turns out I was actually managing an undiagnosed traumatic brain injury, TBI. So who knows? Totally crazy. So the tools that I teach in the Burnout Blueprint and as a coach, they didn't actually cure my TBI. Dr. Simkovich is doing that by correcting my sphenoid bone placement through treatment. I had the intensive treatment in June, and now I'm in, treatment for basically a whole year in recovery, and it could be that or even longer till my full functioning returns. These practices did something really, really crucial for me. They kept me functional enough and surviving long enough to keep searching until I could find the right doctor. And especially with an invisible injury like a head injury, it can be really crazy and challenging and hard to do. It can take a lot of time. For me, it took my symptoms getting so bad and culminating until the point that it was blatantly obvious. I would like to help other people get their solution a little bit before they're at their absolute bottom. So let me share some of the tools that really make a difference. One is nervous system regulation. This was absolutely critical. When you have a brain injury, your nervous system is in constant fight and flight mode. So learning to regulate and move your body from fight and flight into rest and digest through specific techniques and practices help me manage my symptoms and really reduce the inflammation in my brain. So that's a whole section in the Burnout Blueprint. And so is breath work. Breath work is the remote to your brain. Breath is the fastest way to influence your brain state and your nervous system. So the breathing practices that I learned in India, Tibet, Nepal, Spain, all over the, US as well, particularly the ones that activate your parasympathetic nervous system, really helped calm the chaos in my brain and restore some of my pituitary function. As well as, there's a couple different, I teach in the course, one technique for relaxation, one for balancing the left and right brain hemispheres, and one for purification and cleansing of toxins, more of like a detox. So they're all important in different ways for brain function. Another topic in my course, but that's so important, even if you're just doing this as self-discovery, is meditation and mindfulness practices for my cognitive function. So research shows that meditation actually helps heal the brain and can help heal brain injuries by promoting neuroplasticity and reducing inflammation. So I was doing this, again, without even knowing that it was helping my TBI. The next thing is energy and boundary work. So boundaries and consent are the kind of core crucial pieces of energy work, energy hygiene, as I like to call it. And when you're dealing with a chronic illness or chronic injury, you absolutely have to protect your peace and your energy, and you have to protect your healing. Especially because usually the closest people to you and the people that you really expect to be there for you are not the ones that support you in the ways that you need, and that can be incredibly difficult. For me, that was the hardest thing for me. I had so many friends that I thought would show up and be there for me, and I thought I'd insulated and protected myself by having all friends who were coaches and teachers and healers and Reiki masters and things like that. And turns out there was a lot of spiritual narcissism and ego still to be dealt with there. And it was very, very hurtful, deeply hurtful experience that I'm working through, the forgiveness pieces and, all of those things and letting go on my own. But I want to bring that up because I know how hurtful that can be. And if you're dealing with a chronic issue or illness right now, then, you probably suffered in some ways from your relationships and lack of proper boundaries and respect. So speaking up, learning about how to, one, have and set boundaries, but then two, how to speak up about them is so important and one of the most critical pieces of managing my life force energy, which is essential to not completely depleting yourself or ending up, completely burned out or worse. The next thing is managing your 4 happiness chemicals. Whoop. So that is oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. Understanding how to naturally restore dopamine and serotonin and all these hormones when they've maybe been depleted because your hormones aren't working correctly, your pituitary function maybe isn't working, or whatever you have going on is maybe impacting, whether it's just a brain injury like mine or something else. Regardless of what you have going on, understanding how to naturally stimulate and regulate those 4 happiness chemicals is so, so beneficial. This can help you stay functional even when everything isn't maybe working properly. So huge for brain health and recovery. Those tools are all part of my Burnout Blueprint program. I also talk about the lymphatic system and the importance of sound and frequency and Reiki and different ways to, raise your vibration in this crazy world, and more fine tune your instrument. We are a beautiful instrument, and when we're given the right tools and the right environment, this works like a symphony and plays absolutely beautiful, beautiful music. So these tools are all covered more in my Burnout Blueprint program, and I'll include those links below as well as a discount for you guys. I really understand them at such a much deeper level now that they're not just burnout prevention tools, they're also brain healing tools. And in this crazy overstimulated world, where there's so much fighting us and fighting against us and constantly taking us off track and off of our highest frequency and highest, timeline to success, we need these things to bring ourselves back into balance. And you are the alchemist. We are each the alchemist of our own energy and our own journey. And these things can truly help you pull yourself back and learn how to bring yourself back into harmony and back into balance again and again, clearly no matter how far off track you get. So going through this 22-year brain injury also taught me some really valuable lessons that I want to share as the last thing here. The first is just a reminder that people will gaslight you and you need to keep going anyway. Your doctors might not believe you, your friends might minimize what you're experiencing, even your family and your romantic partners might question. But if your inner voice won't let up, if you have a little voice in there saying something is wrong, get help. I had this knowing that I wasn't going to live very long, that I don't have now since I went through treatment. And that's been so strange. I had this underlying nagging in my soul that would not let up. And it just disappeared somehow over the last few months. So that was a huge lesson for me. And I'm so glad I did. I was so close to giving up, you guys. I was so close to just, I guess this is just it. So keep fighting. Your higher intelligence is speaking to you. That is literally your body trying to save you. So listen. Lesson number 2 is that invisible injuries are real even when no one can see them. All right. Remember, nobody could see what I was going through. Nobody. And some people treated me really badly as a result of what I went through. Brain injuries don't show up on the most standard MRIs, especially the sphenoid bone displacement isn't something that doctors routinely check for. And there's so much that we don't know about the brain and the body still. So you have to speak up. You have to ask for help. But also, and this is part is critical about, speaking up and speaking up for yourself in general is about boundaries. You have to also set boundaries. Set boundaries with people who aren't protecting your peace, or if people aren't believing you or aren't listening to you. Your healing really depends on that. So it may not be easy, but let me know if you need support. The next lesson is that, the people you expect to show up might not. So kind of, on that same line, I've mentioned this a little bit already, but this one was hard for me. The people I thought would support me the most, certain friends and family members, some of them turned out to be the absolute worst and the most inauthentic and the most absent. And it sucks to be shown a cold shoulder, especially by someone who holds themselves on such a high enlightened path. But what I learned about spiritual narcissism the hard way is that, some people in the wellness space are just really more concerned with their image and how they come off than actually helping people and actually healing people. And that goes for, doctors and people in the wellness space, and also just, family and friends. Sometimes they might say that they're there for you, and they may be able to verbally say that they're there for people, but they may not actually be able to be there for people. And what I've learned is you need to let that go. That's their problem, not yours. And just as much as the people that you expect to show up don't, there are going to be other people who you don't even see coming. They're just going to come out of the woodworks and surprise you with showing up, and they're going to be there for you and with bells on and lights, and it's going to just rock your world in the best ways. So open your heart to that. Junk the junk, love the love. All right, so lesson 4 out of 5 is that energy truly is everything in business and in life. 90% of business is energy and attraction. I truly believe this. When I don't take good care of my energy field every day, it shows. It shows, and my business suffers and I struggle. When I am showing up and I'm fully practicing and prioritizing my self-care, prioritizing my energy and taking care of my energy hygiene, even when I'm going through something really difficult and really challenging, through pure magnetics, I attract the things that I need. And honestly, through the last couple of years, they've been my hardest and most difficult in my health and in my life. And I fully backed up from things like social media and showing up online and like doing people pleasing and doing too much for other people. I pulled back and really prioritized the people that were showing up for me and my clients who, are incredible. And I ended up attracting in through referrals and different things, the biggest and best opportunities of my entire 10, 12 years in my business. Wow, has it been? I started in 2016, so it's been a while. Well, that was when I went full-time. I started part-time back in 2012 after that first big adventure, going to Nepal and India and getting my first yoga certification. But in all that time, like, it was crazy to me that I actually attracted the biggest opportunities from a place of, doing so much less and really being in an energetic, more magnetic state, a rested state, working and focusing on my healing and having proper priorities and proper boundaries, healthy boundaries with people. They're respected, and it really actually ended up leveling my life to, take that much care. So lesson 5, to just kind of wrap all of that up, is to always listen to your gut instinct. Trust and listen to your inner wisdom and your intuition. Do the things you need to do. Practice meditation, practice yoga, stay properly hydrated, get sunshine in every day. Breath work is the remote to your brain. Practice the breath and let the breath take you to your intuition. Those are the practices that will help you sharpen listening to that inner innate intelligence that we all have. Prayer and Reiki as well. But sometimes, if something is keeping you up at night, you have to fight for it and you have to keep going because your intuition might be trying to save your life. So do the things that you need to do to sharpen those areas of your intuition and your intention in how you're living your life. I knew that something was deeply wrong. I had that nagging feeling something was just not right. And even though everyone kept telling me it was just Lyme disease or just this or just that or just, it must be in my head or whatever, I kept searching, and that persistence actually ended up saving my life. So, so much. Now I'm in recovery and my sphenoid bone has been corrected. My brain and my pituitary gland can finally start healing properly. I can feel everything starting to work better and click into place. My migraines are becoming less. My sleep is improving. I'm still having a lot of vision issues and different neurological things, but I'm slowly but surely moving in the right direction every single day. And the recovery process can be long and can be challenging. I'm not going to lie about that. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm perfect and everything is totally fine now. But the improvements have been things that I really never thought were possible. And I'm so excited. So if this story resonated with you, please share this video. You might save somebody's life by helping them recognize that they have a brain injury or something like that going on by being able to recognize these symptoms. And if you want to learn the tools that help me stay functional enough to find healing, of course, you can check out more in the Burnout Blueprint links below. I'm going to be sharing a lot more of my recovery journey, different brain health discoveries, and the development of my Harmonic Human course. So please subscribe to the channel and follow me on Instagram, on TikTok, at Corrine Summers Coaching, so that you don't miss any of those updates or learning opportunities. And the bottom line is that if I can survive 22 years with a bone literally misplaced in my head, screwing up my pituitary function and all of my hormones and my neurology, but still balance a coaching business with that chronic illness and avoid burnout while I'm in my recovery. and then come out thriving on the other side, which is exactly what I'm in the process of doing right now, you can do the same thing. You absolutely can do this and more, and I want that for you. This was the hardest thing I ever did, recording this right now, but I want that healing for you so bad, and that is why I pushed myself to do this, because the feeling that I have now, having actually experienced these miracles and this healing in my life, I just, if anybody out there could possibly be suffering from this and not be aware, I want to be able to reach those people. So you can come out thriving. You can do this and more. Please trust your gut and keep on fighting. You've got this, and know that the tools that you need might be closer than you think. They might just be a phone call and a friend away. They might be in this course. But anyway, I'm so grateful that you're here, and thank you if you made it this far. Thank you so much for listening.